Hey there, everyone, or no one, dependent upon who's here now and who's not here now. It's that wonderful moment that I always speak about at the beginning of my live YouTube appearances where you're sitting here, because I'm not standing, I'm sitting, right? I'm sitting. And you're actually going, gee, is there anybody really watching? Or am I perhaps just here all by myself? I really don't know. And you don't know until somebody else says something. Yay, and Radhika said something. So now we know that somebody else is here. Now we know that somebody is here. So let's just see how many more people end up being here. So just a general question and answer session today. A couple things I might want to talk about on the side. Those of you who have been here before, you kind of know the rules of the road, but I'm going to go over them anyway. And I may go over them like 5, 6, 7, 8 times, right? Any general astrological questions can be asked here. But please keep in mind that if you're asking a question about your horoscope, it becomes pretty obvious after a while, right? Because not many people come out and go, what does it mean if blah blah is in the fifth house for this type of ascendant and this is here and this is there? You know, that's not really quite a hypothetical situation that a lot of people would just kind of go, I know, I'm just going to randomly think about what does it mean if this planet is here, here, and here, and ask the astrologer. Those become obvious that you're just kind of asking me to look at your horoscope for you for free, which is not something that I'm here to do, because anything that I tell you here is really going to be very general information about astrology, information to guide you in certain directions about how to appropriately think about the planets, how to judge the planets correctly as per my own astrological opinion, which may differ from the astrological opinion of other people, because us astrologers are really great at having differing points of view. And that's just how we are. But feel free to start asking, and I'll do my best to start answering. It's Stump the Astrologer. Hello to everyone who is saying hello. And sometimes I wonder if some of you started saying hello like about 3 minutes ago and it's just now popping up on the screen. I wonder how fast YouTube really is at putting things up on the screen. So hello, everybody. Feel free to ask any astrological questions you might want to ask. So here's a question I've got for everybody else, right? Let's see how many people, what people come up with, right? This is kind of like a poll. Let's see. Well, somebody's asking, how are planets that are conjunct a planet that is involved in a Padavartana yoga affected? It depends on the Padavartana yoga. It also depends on how productive in the yoga those planets are. If those two planets are supportive of each other in a Padavartana yoga, rather than one planet pulling another one down because of ruling like a difficult house or something like that, then it can support those other planets dependent upon if that planet is also friendly to that first planet. And sometimes it can help that planet to be productive regardless, but may bring some psychological complexes, because, you know, that's the thing that we don't think about. We get so focused with astrology on thinking about, I want to predict something concrete. Well, you know, sure, maybe you can go, somebody comes to you as an astrologer and goes, when am I going to get married? Well, you're going to get married on this day. So they've told you when you're going to get married, but they haven't told you how happy you're going to be in your marriage, or if that's actually, you know, perhaps a marriage that you're going to regret getting into in the first place. And we forget all about the psychological aspects of things and how happy we're going to be with those things that are created, and just quite often think about what is actually getting created. But we need to kind of see beyond that, in my opinion. Okay. You'll find with some of the higher divisional charts that you have Rahu and Ketu in the same house. There are specific divisional charts that do that. like the Trimshamsha chart. It places them in the same house. With the higher divisionals that do that, those are, and it's common. It's not like, it's a what anomaly that it's happening in those charts. It will happen in every case in the charts that's happening in. Um, what you're dealing with is the path of Ketu and the path of Rahu are together focusing, pardon me, on that individualistic uh, area of the chart. And it's because the higher divisional charts, whereas like, the Rashi chart and the Hora chart and the Chaturtamsha chart and the Saptamsha chart and the Navamsha chart and the Dashamsha chart and the Dwadashamsha chart, all those charts deal primarily with concrete things that are in our life. But when we're dealing with the higher divisional charts, we're dealing with the relationship that we have to those concrete things that are in our life. So when that happens, it's much more about the internal processes that are going on. For the most part, Shadamsha chart, you can look at vehicles, but you can also look at the Shadamsha chart for overall happiness. So when you have the nodes in that same house, it's because those particular divisional charts deal with more of the internalized process. And the calculation is just going to naturally place them in that particular position. So since these are how am I relating to it on a certain level, that's your karmic approach to a particular situation. And so the nodes are united in that house, but they're going to be different from each other too, because obviously they'll be in different nakshatras. I hope that answers your question for you. Okay. For career, is it more important to analyze 10th house and 10th lord or the whole D10 chart? It's important to look at both the Rashi chart and the Dashamsha chart for career, because the Dashamsha chart doesn't just focus on career, it focuses on one's great successes in life. That's what the Dashamsha chart is about, is what the things that you're either going to be successful with or not successful with. And of course, your vocation and your career can tie into that. And that's why we tend to look at that. But you also need to look at the Rashi chart for that, not just the Dashamsha chart. You need to look at both. Okay. And, so in those, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for change of career, you might want to look for a mixture of 8th and 10th house factors, things along those lines. Okay. Okay. Somebody saying, what's my comment on Shadbala of planets? How do the Shadbala of planets use to affect the particular dasha? You have to consider Shadbala is going to show the overall general strength of a planet. Two crucial components to Shadbala that I tend to tap into more often than anything else are Digbala and Chestabala, because Digbala is going to show our capacity to direct the energy of the planet, because you can have a strong planet, but then if it's got weak Digbala, it's hard for you to direct the energy of that planet in order to make it effective. If you've got low Chestabala, then our behavior in association with that particular planet is somehow weak or out of alignment, or we don't harness it correctly, or perhaps we're lazy with it, all sorts of different things. Okay, I hope that made sense. Okay, so let's see if anybody else has any questions. I have an announcement before we go into the questions. So anybody who before 10:30 p.m. tonight, London time, right? So if you're in the States, you need to look up online about how far off from London time you are and calculate that time in your particular time zone. But anybody before 10:30 p.m. tonight who schedules a consultation with me, aside from the one question service and the career service level 1, it has to be a consultation that is in the range of $139 or above. Anybody who schedules one of those consultations, like a follow-up consultation, is $139 if you've already worked with me before. The initial astrology consultation, can you believe I forget my own prices? How can the astrologer forget their own prices? I do that, right? Here, we're gonna look it up. So we'll give you the price on everything. Bear with me, everybody, and thanks for being patient. But what I'm gonna say is anybody who orders, one of my astrological services that is $139 or above, which would be focusing on basically the follow-up consultation level 1, and the initial astrology session, which is $169, and the karmic analysis, which is also $169. If you order any of those services or above, you'll get a free one question service that you can do what you want to with. You can give that to a friend as long as you let me know that that's the friend that you're giving it to, or you can keep it for yourself for some future date. But anybody who schedules one of my services tonight before basically 10:30 p.m. London time, you get a free one question service. Now that's a pretty big bargain because basically I'm giving you a $95 service for free because you've purchased another service for me from me. And there should be a link up above in the video. I don't know if it's this side or the other side for you, because sometimes it reverses me on the screen. That'll take you to my astrological services page, where you can do that should you wish. And we'll mention that again. Okay. But you only have until 10:30 p.m. London time tonight, and then I'm going to stop. Okay. And tonight, for those of you who might be watching this tomorrow, is the 17th of May. All right. Is it best to use the true position or mean position of the nodes? I find the true position to be more accurate. I actually use something called interpolated true node, which not every astrology software calculates. Kala calculates it though. And I have found that to be the most accurate in regards to the nodes. Okay. Let's see some of the other questions. Okay, so somebody's asking what happens if in the D10 chart, the Atmakarika is the Lord of the 10th and is placed in the 8th? Well, one thing that's most likely going to be certain during the dasha of that particular planet is that the path or the vocational path and the path to success of the individual is going to be a bit topsy-turvy, but topsy-turvy means a lot of different things. So if that Lord of the 10th is strong and pretty solid, and what do I mean by that? I don't just mean dignity. I mean if it's in Bala Avasta or Kumara Avasta or Yuva Avasta, or if it's Jagrad, which means it's in its own house, or it's Mula Trikona, or it's exalted, then those experiences are going to be productive. If it's weak, then those can be a little more difficult. Which planet represents real estate and garment business? I tend to look at Mars for that, unless you're looking at buying land. And if you're looking at buying land, then it would be Saturn in that particular capacity. Okay, let's see. Vidya, you need to go a little bit deeper with your question, because you say for an approaching Mars Mahadasha, could this Mars in Capricorn be a trigger of sorts? Mars can be a trigger sometimes, but it depends on your own individual horoscope. Okay. Mars and Gemini in the first, well, it can make things a little bit challenging in that regard. Okay. Would a Jupiter retrograde in Leo in the 8th be auspicious for things like lottery wins? Somebody's got Jupiter retrograde in Leo in the 8th, and they're wondering if they're going to win the lottery. I can't tell you that just looking at that one planetary position, right? I'd tell you to go out and buy a lottery ticket, and then you'd find out you didn't win. And next thing you know, you'd be upset at the astrologer because they told you something, right? Okay. Just to kind of give you a heads up as to why, all right? How to get rid of the bad energy of Rahu Jupiter in the 8th house in Libra. A lot of it depends on the rest of your chart, but let's talk about bad energy. Planets are never bad. They bring difficulty, right? It's not like there's some cosmic baddies that have it out for you, even though it kind of feels like that sometimes. I'll be the first to admit that. It's not like there's these cosmic baddies that have it in for you. They're kind of trying to get you to grow your karma in a specific way. So, how to get rid of difficult energy of Rahu, Jupiter in the eighth house? Well, think more deeply about your beliefs. Your beliefs may be changing, your philosophy's changing. Accept that they're changing, accept that dharma is always changing. Your approach to life is always going to change, right? You may have fluctuations in fortune. Accept that, work with it. Look at where you feel vulnerable in regards to that, because with Rahu, it's always about where we feel vulnerable. And basically, if you've got Rahu in the eighth, then that kind of places you in a position where trust issues are a pretty big one for you, and you may find yourself in positions where you feel somewhat abandoned by other people, and that places you in positions where you may get into personality conflicts with some of your associates and things like that. But it's not so much just about them in that particular situation. A lot of it may be about an inability to trust people, but usually has its root in an inability on many levels to trust yourself, because you may find yourself in a position where you don't know who to believe in or what to believe in. I bet you weren't expecting me to go that deep with that. Neither was I. Okay, but I hope that helps you a little bit, but really it's not going to help you as much as getting a consultation will, because really I'm just looking at a couple of components in your horoscope and I'm not knowing the strength of any of those things. So you really need to, for things like that, let an astrologer look at your horoscope professionally. I like to tell people in a joking manner, but it's not really a joking manner. Those people who come on and they go, I've got this planet here, and this planet here, tell me how to make it better. It's kind of like going into a doctor's office and going, right, I feel this pain in my stomach. Can you do surgery on me? Well, the doctor may not need to do surgery, or, the doctor doesn't really know what's wrong with you or what's the cause of that, other than like one or two things and going on the things that you're saying, right? So, it's always good to get um, a professional opinion on a deeper level than just your Rashi chart. And hey, guess what? If you want to go schedule something with me up until 10:30 p.m. tonight, not only will you get your consultation, if you order something that's above $139, you'll also get a free one question service to use at your disposal in the future. Okay. Destiny point. Well, that's Brigu Bindu. Brigu Bindu is good for a lot of things because it shows a focus of the soul. It's the midway point between Rahu, which Rahu is very big on helping us. I'm trying to think of the best way to give you a simple explanation of Rahu, which I could just talk all day about. Rahu is, as most people like to talk about Rahu in regards to how it's about how we're resolving our previous karma in this lifetime. But Rahu is really so much more than that, because Rahu is going to be representative of where we're vulnerable because we're clinging on to the past, right? And what we're needing to explore so that we can reclaim our power rather than just keep living in some neat little box that we can't really expand beyond, right? So the midway point between Rahu and the moon shows on a certain level the path that your consciousness needs to journey down in order to expand. I use it in one particular thing, and that is to determine what particular vocational direction an individual should take with their life. I use it for that because it acts like glue that'll pull all the different potentials together and define it in one thing. Okay, so that's what the destiny point is. And it has to be calculated in a certain way. Some astrology software does it. My astrology software doesn't do it, though, so I have to calculate it by hand. And it's too long of a process to show you here. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we've got here question-wise. I've heard retrograde planets are loud and are internalized in the natal chart. What, you mean Mercury shouting at you? or Jupiter's going, "Hey, I'm over here." No, those planets are brighter than any other planets in the sky. We're supposed to bring our attention to them. Yes, they're internalized, but most people get like wound up about retrograde planets because they begin to think that a retrograde planet is always going to bring difficult things. It may mean that the external processes of that planet get disrupted, but that's because it's more beneficial for us to become more internal with that particular uh, planet rather than being focused on the external manifestations of it. Okay. Some people like to do yogas in the divisional charts. I find it's really best to just focus on them in the Rashi charts in terms of getting really good accuracy. It depends on how accurate you want to be, really. But that's my opinion. Other people may have differences of opinion with that. Okay. It's drink of water time. How does Moon and Rahu conjunction transit affect people on a mundane level? Well, let's look at that. That's going to happen once a month, right? Once a lunar month, I should say. So Rahu Moon conjunctions generally tend to, if you remember, Rahu expresses those vulnerabilities. And quite often, when we have the moon conjuncting Rahu, there's a certain aspect of our emotions that we're either hiding from ourselves or that we conceal and hide from other people because it's difficult for us to confront those vulnerabilities. And so then we become more accustomed to just taking that and suppressing those emotions rather than externalizing them and finding a way of giving them a healthy expression. So you can pretty much count on one day a month that maybe you're not perceiving something the correct way. And maybe you're feeling emotional about that way that you're perceiving things. And maybe you don't want to let everybody in on those emotions. And maybe you're really not sure how you feel about something. All those different things can be Rahu Moon conjunctions because it really relates to a lot of different things. Okay. Anybody else with any questions? Thank you for all your thank yous. Okay. It's nice when people say thank you. It's nice when people say thank you rather than continually like holding their hand up and insisting that you answer their questions. Somebody's asking how to interpret D9 planet into D1. Can you explain what you mean? Because I'm not really sure as to what you're actually asking. So if you could be a little clearer in your explanation of what you're trying to ask, it would be very helpful. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's just close this down. Um, Sorry for all the noises in the background. Oh, Lula, that's sweet. Thank you. Moon K2 conjunction on a personal level. Okay. It's difficult to say Moon K2 conjunction on a personal level in the D9 chart because really it depends on what the K2 and the moon are connected with there. And I can't really go into an interpretation of your horoscope here. I can give you a broad understanding of what K2 moon conjunctions are about. K2 moon conjunctions generally relate to an area of life where the individual has a great depth of emotional sensitivity about, okay? And about that particular subject, and based on whatever area of the chart K2 and the moon are focusing on, meaning what house K2's in, what house the moon rules, and all sorts of other different factors. And the fact that that's in the Navamsha chart, the Navamsha is about finding purpose and meaning in things. It can be about relationships too, but it also can mean that on many levels, we have this great level of emotional depth, which basically the world doesn't understand on many levels, right? And when we're in a position have that great level of emotional depth about a particular subject and we're forced to try to cope with a world that doesn't understand that level of depth, then we quite often find ourselves in the position of having to suppress our emotions in order to cope with the situation that we're confronted with. And over time of confronting those emotions, they get squashed down. And emotions, guess what? That motion word of emotion is very important. They're meant to move. But, let's face it, you're out at work. You're not going to break down in tears in the middle of the day, are you? Right. So you learn ways to cope with things. But after a while of kind of developing all those coping mechanisms, some small thing will happen and it will trigger those emotions. And all of a sudden, you'll have like these months of emotional repression come to the surface about whatever that subject is about. And the individual it'll take them a long time to process through it. That's how K2 moon conjunctions tend to operate. Thank you for your appreciation of the lunar scopes. That's much appreciated. Thank you. You have to understand somebody's asking a question about Rahu transits. Basically, transits have to be taken in the context of the dasha that they're happening in. So you need to take that into consideration. If there's any 11th house factors being triggered by the dasha that you're in, then it will become more meaningful. Hello, Kamakshi. Good to see you. Okay. Let's see who else is here. And if anybody else has any questions. Boy, my throat is, you know what? I have to say, Alfonso, I don't know what an Inea type 5 is. Hamani, I may have missed your question because the thing is questions are scrolling down the screen for me so quickly that I have to kind of focus my attention on one person's questions. And then by the time I've done that, the other person's questions have disappeared, right? So if I can find your question above, which may or may not be so easy to do. Ah, well, the reason I didn't answer your question, Hamani, is I could only give you a very broad answer, which is not really going to give you anything specific. Jupiter can bring some beneficial energy to that particular connection, but a lot of it really depends on your individual horoscope. And it depends on the strength of Jupiter and so many different qualities, and that's likely why I didn't go into answering that question, because really I would need to see your entire horoscope in order to understand that. But during Rahu Jupiter dasha, obviously those Jupiter areas of the chart and whatever Jupiter and Rahu share in common in terms of houses that they're associating with, planets that they're interacting with, those all become more prominent and heightened because of Jupiter's aspect. But you have to look at Jupiter's nakshatra. You have to look at Jupiter's overall well-being in terms of what it's bringing. And you also have to look at all the different Varga charts. And with planetary aspects, from my own personal opinion, it's best not to use those in the Varga charts because planetary aspects are astronomical in nature. And the Varga charts, what they are is they're just taking the Rashi chart and cutting it up into equal portions. So the only chart that has actual real astronomy in it is the Rashi chart. And that same planetary aspect from the Rashi chart, whatever the strength of it might be, is going to be carried over into the divisional chart. Okay. And that's why some people sometimes look at a particular aspect in a Varga chart and think that that is, creating an aspect and it's giving some positive interpretation to them that's accurate. It's because those two planets are also interacting in the Rashi chart. Check that for me. See if it's not true. And I can pretty much guarantee you'll find that that's the case. Best thing to do in the Varga charts is to work with Rashi aspects. Okay. Okay, let's see what other questions people have. Do we consider Nietzsche, Banga, Raja Yoga, and Navamsha and other divisional charts? Well, that's what I was saying. No, I wouldn't. but it's other astrologers may tell you differently. I just find that really they're best worked with in the Rashi chart. All yogas are best worked with in the Rashi chart. Okay, but that's not me dissing other people who use that technique. It's just me saying I have found just using it in the Rashi chart is more accurate. Jupiter Mahadasha for Taurus Lagna. Would 8th and 11th house get activated together or at different times? It depends on the antardashas that you're in and whether those antardashas also have an 8th and an 11th agenda. And there's more than just one way to judge that. There's so many different ways that that can be judged by being a planet that's placed in the in the 8th and 11th, by being in the 8th and 11th position from Jupiter is one way that that can be judged. By being in the 8th, there's just so many ways to see if they both share that agenda. If you work with house cusps, by looking at the 8th and 11th equal house as well as the 8th and 11th house cusps, so many different ways to really look at that. And so if a planet is Mercury and it's in the 8th and 11th house, it's going to have an 8th and 11th house agenda. Saturn would be the same, Sun would be the same, Rahu would be in the same, because all those planets would create separation from 8th and 11th house things. Also, transits have to be taken into consideration. So that's how things get activated. In short, you need really good astrology software that shows you when all of that is happening. Okay. And then you have a cheat sheet that makes it easier for you, right? Okay, let's see if anybody else has any questions here. So just a reminder to everybody, and this is open until 10:30 p.m. tonight. If you go onto my website on my services page and you order a consultation that is more than $139, you will get a free one question service, which is a $95 value to use at your discrepancy. You can give it to somebody else, or we can schedule in a secondary date for that. In some instances, we can even add it to your consultation, but it depends on time scheduling. But if you do that and you go to the services link above and you schedule something there, as long as it's before 10:30 p.m. tonight London time, which let's give the time zone breakdown. Okay, 5:30 p.m. Eastern in the States, 4:30 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Mountain, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. If you're in India, that's 10 p.m. tonight for you. Oh, I'm sorry, not 10 p.m. tonight. That's do the math, Michael. That is 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. Okay, there we go. Everybody thinks the job of an astrologer is easy, but we have to think multiple time zones all the time. We have to think of what time it is in somebody else's area of the world. Okay, let's see what other questions we've got here. Some of these questions, so I said something at the beginning of the video, and I've kind of, answered a few of your things like this, but people, it becomes very obvious when you're trying to get me to look at your horoscope for you for free, right? Because when you say things like what happens for a certain type of ascendant when they have this planet here, 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 and here, people don't just kind of conjure these ideas up and ask it about some random person. Some people do, maybe. But usually when people are asking that, it's about yourself. And so I've kind of answered a few questions about other people, but I generally tend to steer away from that because I'm just judging it based on 2 or 3 factors in your horoscope. And that's going to lead to greater levels of inaccuracy because I'm not looking at all your Varga charts. And so it's going to be not as accurate. Okay, so I tend to not go into things like that, especially if you're asking about several planets in one house. I have to consider each of those planets, what they're interacting with, and all of those things at the top of my head without really having your chart in front of me. So it kind of makes for a messy situation, right? And it ends up with me just looking at your Rashi chart, not looking at the strength of any of those planets or anything like that, and making some generalization about those particular planets. Okay. Is Mars okay? What is bad? Can somebody answer that question for me? What is a bad planet? Okay. I'm going to challenge people on this. People say this all the time. Is this planet bad? What is bad? What does bad mean? I think maybe what we mean is challenging. Mars is not necessarily bad in Pusha Nakshatra. It's not necessarily bad. Um, it's a debilitated Mars, so Mars is going to be weak unless it's placed in the 10th, and then even though it's weak, it can still be productive. Also depends on the strength of Saturn. And you have to take all those things into consideration. Sacrifice is the key word. Whatever the position, sacrifice is the key word. Let's see what else we've got here. Yeah, negative. So, but again, what are negative results, right? Because here's the question, right? Here's what I'm going to do. And this was something I wanted to talk about earlier, but I got sidetracked. What is astrology for? Is it just about predicting what's going to happen to us? Are we just, at the whim of the universe and are cursed to have all these difficult things happen in our life? Or, is we like blessed to have somebody like give us tons of money, make us successful, make us famous? Is that all astrology is about? If that's the case, then what is your life about? Is your life just about, getting married and whether you're going to be able to stay married? Is it just about acquisitions? Is it just about having success? Is it just about earning money and then you die? Is it just about those things and what you're able to acquire? And what about all those things that you acquire? What about that marriage that you had? What about those two and a half children? Although I never really understood how somebody can have half of a child, right? I never understood that two and a half children bit. Um, two and a half children, right? Career success. Can any of those things go with you when you die? No, they can't. What's going to go with you when you die? Mm, well, hopefully your soul. We don't really have any hard concrete proof of that. And maybe that's why the ego fears death in the first place. And maybe that's why we become so attached to things like success and what bad things are going to happen to me and what good things are going to happen to me. The one really good thing that's going to happen to you in your life, if you apply your awareness to the karma that your particular horoscope indicates, is you're going to evolve. You're going to get closer to that source of the infinite that's within you. It's not outside of you. It's not in that job you want to get. It's not in that person you want to marry. It's not in having that flashy car, right? Sure, God's in everything, but the fulfillment doesn't come through those external things. Those external things wither and die, just like you. You're going to wither and die. So make the most of your life and make it productive and stop viewing life in terms of this is negative, that is positive, right? Because really, sure, life is challenging, but sometimes the most challenging planets can bring the most beneficial things into our life. Take Mars, for instance. That's a pretty challenging planet, right? It's going to create things with a lot of stress, right? Regardless of what it's doing, it's going to create things with stress. Even if it's exalted, right? That's going to be a powerful planet, but there's going to be this one side of it that goes, there's a problem here, and I have to deal with that problem. Why? Because Mars is a tamasic planet. So those planets are going to identify problems, but they create things. And they create more than just external things in our life. They create our growth. They create our relationship to all those things that are in our lives, right? Those are the things that are important, right? None of this, not this cup. This cup isn't going to go with me when I die. This computer that I could bounce up and down, that's not going to go with me when I die. My, wallet, am I going to be able to take my wallet with me when I die? No. Will I wear glasses when I die? No, probably not. It's just, yeah. So we need to kind of, in my opinion, get beyond bad planet, good planet, negative planet, positive planet. We need to really see all of these planets are serving a positive purpose. That's why I'm a big fan of using the original terminology for planets rather than calling them benefic and malefic, which are somya, which means gentle, and krura, which means cruel. Because a gentle planet, it just means that it accomplishes things with a state of ease, but a gentle planet can also be lazy. Okay. A cruder planet accomplishes things in a harsh way. And so it doesn't mean that those things that it's accomplishing in a harsh way are not necessary. So, um, those are things we have to consider. Somebody says, I have been called a wounded healer. Does that mean I will always appear a bad example? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think being a wounded healer means that you're a bad example. You're healing, so you may be helping other people. But if you want to be a better example, is to always heal yourself. Always heal yourself. You have to include yourself in the healing. Sometimes, notice what the astrologer is saying. Sometimes us wounded healers, right? We tend to ignore those aspects of ourselves. But what I find, especially when I'm doing consultations for people, quite often I'll attract certain clients to myself that force me to look at something inside of myself that I've been ignoring for a long time. And we get healed in those moments too. Because, you have to look at it this way, this whole wounded healer thing, right? Uh, Only on the Maya level am I separate from you. Am I separate from that tree? Only on that level. And that's not illusion, because, and I always like using this analogy. So if you're bored with it, so what? Which is that in Maya, if a brick falls on your head, it hurts. Okay, so it feels very realistic. You can't really say it's illusionary, but there's something that's beyond that. So there's no separation between me, you, another person, whatever. So if we're healing other people, we're healing aspects of ourselves, really, right? And none of us is completely whole and perfect, with the exception of a few people, who are just, here, like me. No, I'm only kidding. Who are here to, help people and to guide people and show people how to evolve and how to grow. And those are self-realized individuals. I'm by no means self-realized. I have lots of nasty habits. You don't want to know about it. Kidding. Right. All right. Let's see what other questions we've got here. I'm beginning to lose my voice here, so I can't stay on too much longer. But I've actually enjoyed today a lot more than I have enjoyed many of my previous sessions, which isn't to say I haven't enjoyed those previous sessions, but it's to say that the astrologer is waffling and doesn't really know what the heck he's talking about. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Okay, Paresh, I suggest that you schedule a consultation with me, because I'm not going to be able to judge that for you based on those positions that you are mentioning, because I need to look at the strength of all those planets. I need to look at divisional charts. I need to look at so many things. So if you're happy to schedule with me, basically, as I've mentioned to everybody else, until 10:30 p.m. London time tonight, if you schedule a consultation that is $139 or above, then you will get a free one question service as well to do with that what you want. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we've got here. How can someone judge that a disease will be cured? You have to look at a lot of different things. You have to, Jaimini dashas can be very helpful. There's a specific um, type of dasha that can be used. It's called Nirjana dasha, that can be used to determine when more positive influences are coming in. When you go out of if you're in the Mahadasha of a strong health-oriented planet and you're in a difficult Antardasha and you go into another strong Antardasha, that can also be a good signal for healing. But there are some things that are chronic in the chart too, and those have to be taken into consideration. So there are really a lot of factors to look at rather than just one or two. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Curious if this is really valid. What do you mean if what is really valid? If you mean yogas, here's the deal with yogas, and this is why I'm not answering your question, because the thing is yogas have to be qualified in a chart and they have to be judged. So for instance, let's say you've got a yoga that creates enjoyable, pleasant results. See, I avoided using the word good. And it also creates some difficult and challenging results. It produces both of those. It can produce those. How are you going to judge which of those it's going to do? Well, if the planet is overall a planet that brings health to the horoscope, good astrological health to the horoscope, then more of those beneficial qualities will come out, but the planet has to have the strength to do that. And there's several different ways to judge it. It's not just a simple thing. If you have good astrology software like Kala, it just has a screen that calculates it for you. Um, if it has more weakness in the chart and does more harm in the chart than it does help, then more of those difficult results are going to surface. So that's why a lot of people get involved in yogas and then find that they don't produce the result that they were thinking that it was going to result. Sorry, result. It doesn't produce the result that they were thinking it was going to create because the planet doesn't have the strength to create it. Hey, everybody, the astrologer's getting tongue twisted. So I do believe that it is time for me to go and say good night for tonight. So just a reminder, if you order a consultation before 10:30 p.m. London time tonight, you get a free one question service. It has to be a consultation that is above the price of $139. You can only purchase my $139 consultation if you've scheduled with me before, and I will know, I should say. And the initial astrology consultation is $169, as well as the career consultation level 2, karmic analysis, anything that level or above, or if you're a previous client of mine, the follow-up consultation level 1 will work too. But schedule any of those and you'll get the $95 value of a one question consultation. Okay, so that's going to do it, everybody. I will talk to everybody the next time I have a spare moment to come on and say hello. Until then, take it easy.